It's good to have you join us as we take a look at our national dailies this morning. It's Off the Press. I am Mary-Ann Okon, and this is the show where we get to look at the stories making headlines on our national dailies, analysing them, but not on our own, of course. We always have a guest here to do justice to that. And this morning we have with us a legal practitioner, Daniel Odupe, to do that. Good morning, Mr. Daniel. It's good to have you join us.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here.
All right. Thank God it's Friday.
Thank God it's Friday.
Well, we have our national dailies, Vanguard, Punch, This Day, Nation, and Complete Sports. As usual, Off the Press is not complete if we do not talk about the sports side of life. But let's start with the big stories on Vanguard Newspaper this morning. That's our first port of call. INEC holds makeup polls in 17 states and the FCT tomorrow. That's a big story on the cover of the Vanguard Newspaper. And of course, you can find that story in page 4 of the Vanguard Newspaper. INEC resumes coalition in Rivers April 2nd to declare final results between April 13 and 15. Federal government orders closure of land borders in Adamawa, Benue and Sokoto. Army police vow to deal with troublemakers. Still under that story, INEC up to mischief, says APC. No need for Bauchi makeup polls, says the PDP. IGP deploys 5 DIGs, 3 AIGs and 15 CPs. All of these stories you'll find on page 4 of the Vanguard Newspaper. On the top right of the Vanguard Newspaper, suspected herdsman kill Catholic priest, local government scribe in Enugu. Fresh crisis brew in MKO Abiola's family over Ayobo estate land. And of course, on the top left side of Vanguard Newspaper, it's wrong to say election was militarized. General Burutai, Chief of Army Staff, is reacting to INEC's position. Militarized elections worse than military regime, says Shoni Bare, Afenifere chieftain. And of course, the other stories in the Vanguard Newspaper: Boko Haram, more children die from lack of access to safe water than bullets, says UNICEF. And CCT trial, I have no case to answer, Onogan insists. Increase in VAT will hurt businesses and consumers, OPS warns. Shops, cars, motorbikes destroyed in Lagos gas explosion. Now, I'll come to you, Daniel. Let's start with the big story, INEC's makeup polls and who's wrong or who's right. INEC is saying that, or APC saying INEC is up to mischief, and the PDP on the other hand is saying, oh, there's no need for Bauchi makeup polls. And of course, Rivers State has its own situation. What are your thoughts on these several makeup elections or supplementary elections here and there?
Really, my challenge is that as a people, we have not made any progress. I can't recall we having this number of supplementary election in 2015. I would have thought that as a people, we should get better. In my honest opinion, the 2015 election was a little better than 2011 election. And one would have thought that the 2019 election would take it a step further. I mean, the lessons are there to be learned. I mean, somebody said that when you keep doing the same thing and then you expect a different result, that's one of the definitions of insanity. I'm sorry to say, but we are not learning the lessons. These challenges are not new. And even in 2015, we didn't have this much supplementary elections. What happened? How did you get it wrong? What will happen in the next election? So I think for me, I just hope that this election, this supplementary election will be better, because now, more resources available to man, limited places and all that. But the biggest concern for me really is that as a people, we ought to be getting better. I mean, we have no business having this much supplementary election when we had the 2015 election that was not perfect, and the lessons were there to be learned. We tried certain things. We started the card reader system and all of those things, and we ought to have learned and get better with time.
Just to push you a bit more on learning lessons. Do you necessarily think, or what do you think is responsible for us not learning, seemingly not being able to learn from every election cycle, and we keep making the same mistakes year in, year out?
I think it bothers more on planning, really. When you don't. I mean, for example, the next election, planning ought to start already now. The challenges that were experienced, the manpower and all of that, moving resources here and there. These things keep recurring every election cycle. So it boils down to proper planning. I think we are doing, and it reflected, as a nation, the way we govern ourselves, the way we operate as a people. It's obvious because, so unfortunately, the election is just another byproduct, and only that is now well magnified, because this borders basically on planning properly. See, I did it this way, we did it this way, these are challenges we had. How can we make it better? Everybody will go to sleep after this supplementary election, and then 2 years or 1 year to the election, to the next election, we'll start talking about it again. And then you don't just do things that way. So I think it boils down to planning properly, looking at the challenges, looking at the loopholes, making sure that we get better with time. We address the challenges that are experienced during this election. I
know you're not a security expert, neither are you an environmentalist, but this affects us all. Safe water, and today is International Day for Water. Well, UNICEF is saying that more children die from lack of access to safe water than bullets. And this is disturbing. I was telling somebody yesterday that I have a documentary me and my friends did years ago in some community very close to the FCT who still don't have access to clean drinking water. And they have members representing them in the National Assembly. They have House of Assembly members. So it's really ridiculous that even in a city, people don't have access to clean drinking water. What does that mean for us?
And these are the issues. It borders on infrastructure. Water is so basic, it's so basic that we have no business having this kind of challenge, water this is not even, it's not power supply. This is water. All you need to do is to, and then we have water corporations, states, at the federal level and all of that. And we're still talking about
do they work?
This.
That's the question. Because, I grew up on water board. That's what we used to call it, water board. And you didn't necessarily have to go anywhere. You just turn on the taps and water came out. It was clean. You could drink that water. But today the case is different. And I wonder, why are these water boards or water agencies not necessarily working? What could be the challenge?
Like you mentioned, these places where you have these challenges, they have representatives both in the Senate, House of Reps, even in the State House of Assembly, they have representatives, and you wonder what they are doing. Ordinarily, the ultimate responsibility of anybody representing any geographical location, is to further the interest of such people. So it's a slap. We keep talking about President Barry, we keep talking about the executive. But what about these people that are representing these various geographical locations? It's a slap on their face. It's a slap to them. That the area they're representing, such challenges are still eminent. It's just unfortunate, really, because you wonder what they are doing in the House. You wonder what kind of, because if you say you represent the people and these are challenges, and and it's been like that for years and it's not getting better, and you come for election, during election time, you ask for their vote again, you go back in, and then nothing changes. It's just unfortunate.
Is that not a shame on our part as the people, the followers? In just one sentence, shouldn't we also be part of the blame? Because these same people go and they don't do what you ask them to do, and they come back for your vote, and you still let them go back.
Absolutely, you're right about that. We definitely need to take a large chunk of the blame, because we're not proactive enough at all.
Let's move on to the Punch newspaper. Top stories in the Punch newspaper. In fact, the biggest story on the Punch newspaper. INEC reacts as US says voter intimidation in Nigeria's 2019 polls is disappointing. This story you can find on the in page 2 of the Punch newspaper. APC, PDP trade rigging allegations ahead of Saturday's polls. The drama continues. INEC sends 3 additional wrecks to Kanu. Police deploy 5 DIGs, 15 CPs, and AIGs. Still under that story of INEC reacting as US says voter intimidation in Nigeria's 2019 polls is disappointing. The US is saying we too were disappointed by the low voter turnout, as well as credible reports of voter intimidation, vote buying, interference by security forces, and violence in some locations. INEC's response: in our reckoning, coupled with various reports released by local and international observers, so far the 2019 general elections were a success, but by no means perfect. So INEC and the US representatives there having a go at each other. And below we can see pictures of buildings burned. There was an attack by suspected Fulani herdsmen in Sanga local government area of Kaduna State. And this is photo is what is on the cover page of the Punch newspaper. Gunmen killed 2 corps members in Bayelsa. Ekiti begins work on 8.9 billion naira boundary road. CBN to maintain tight monetary policy estimates at 12% inflation. And this one says census will cost over 220 billion naira, says Population Commission. I want to start with that one. Let's talk about the population census. There have been observations, there have been statements. I remember former NPC boss, he's from the East, I can't remember his name, under the Jonathan administration, did mention that not some of the numbers that we get during census are inflated for political reasons, and we still are yet to get an exact number of how many people are in Nigeria. And now we need 220 billion naira. Does this mean that we're going to get it right this time?
I absolutely hope that we get it right. You know, it's so unfortunate we politicize everything in Nigeria, you know, and, you know, the census is important for planning purposes, for developmental purposes, and then so when you now politicize it and you don't allow you cannot even beat your chest and say these results are at least 90% accurate. It's a problem. I mean, no one, and that's the starting point. That's starting. If you don't know the number of people that you have per state, per local government, you know, how do you plan? How do you properly plan? So it's just unfortunate that every day we just read politics into everything, and then as a people we complain when things are not moving right. Because how do you even plan? How do you know what to do per time? You know, if you don't even have the accurate numbers, it's just unfortunate. Really.
Let's talk about this INEC US statements. You know, the US is saying voter intimidation. This were glaring things to us, according to what we saw. And INEC, this is what the US is saying. And INEC is saying, well, we didn't have a perfect election, but we don't think that, you know, this election was as disappointing as you make it out to seem. What do you say?
I'm just wondering what's in it for the US. I mean, you know, they might not be interested as a country in, you know, Nigeria getting highly developed, but they certainly want us not to have crisis, because it's not in anybody's interest if we have, you know, humanitarian crisis and what have you. So I just wonder what INEC is up to, because, you know, it's a case of celebrating mediocrity. So it wasn't perfect, but, you know, we didn't do that badly.
But they're hinging on the fact that, look, we had international observers who said, oh, it was fair, it was credible.
Did they?
Yeah, we had those kind of reports, and so INEC was saying, well, international observers said this election was okay. It was a success. Why are you here pointing fingers at us? I mean, if these observers have already given us a thumbs up.
Do we even need international observers? What is the verdict of Nigerians? I mean, what are we saying about the election? You know, I just said earlier now that, you know, personally, I didn't think we made any progress. So, you know, it's unfortunate, you know, we didn't do that badly. There's no perfect election anyway. That's just mediocrity, you ask me. Did you make progress from the previous election? It's just as big. We're not trying to foist any international standard on you. Look at where you're coming from. Look at where you are. Would you say we didn't have this much supplementary election? You know, so that is a clear indicator that things didn't go right. We didn't plan properly. We didn't make any progress, unfortunately.
Interesting. Let's move on to the Nation newspaper. Top story in the Nation newspaper: legal battles, muscle flexing as APC PDP gets set for polls. It seems to be the biggest story in all the national dailies this morning. On the top left corner of the Nation newspaper, knocks for police as cultists kill 3 core members. EFCC US report over anti-graft war is false. You can find that on page 7. And on the top right corner, Content Board, NLNG seal $1 billion deal. Council Secretary dies in ambush. Defense Headquarters, no rift between the military and police. Etebo Ndifreke proves fitness. Let's move to the bottom of the Nation newspaper. 4 vehicles burned in Lagos gas explosion. Rivers INEC to resume coalition of results, and local bond market attracts $6 billion, says the CBN. Now, let's start with the EFCC saying US's report on anti-graft war is false. Now, the US is also, again, picking holes in the EFCC's anti-graft war. Some might, even in Nigeria, call it lopsided, and some might say, well, it's those who have some skeletons in their cupboard crying foul. What's your take on this?
I mean, again, do we really need the US to tell us that the anti-graft war has been lopsided? It's every Nigerian, every honest Nigerian will tell you that, look, while we appreciate the posture of the current administration to fight corruption and what have you, how have they been going about it? You know, you have cases of people who are accused of corruption, and then because they're in the corridors of power, or they matter to the, you know, to the ruling party, you know, they just keep silent about it and then go about it. It's unfortunate. We don't need anybody to tell us. It's obvious. We are not going about it the right way. Justice must not only be done, it must be seen to be done. You say you're fighting corruption, and you know you have reasons. You are giving, you know, those you are prosecuting sufficient reason to say, look, this is a witch hunt. That's unfortunate. That should not happen. It shouldn't matter who, you know, who is being prosecuted. Things should be done properly. Justice should be seen to be done, you know, on all sides. So it's unfortunate.
All right. Let's take one more story from the Nation newspaper. Well, this one says 4 vehicles were burned in Lagos gas explosion. Again, how do we? I mean, everybody's open to using gas these days. In fact, if you have a little above 5,000, you can get gas in your house. But how do we store it? How do we protect our children, especially for those who have families? I remember a gas explosion that I heard of. I think it was in Port Harcourt. A man tried to help his wife to turn on the gas, and he was burned to death, literally in front of his wife and his children, just before she was about to make lunch for them. So again, one would wonder, how should we be storing our gas? How safety conscious are we in this part of the world? I mean, we just lost some lives from a building collapse. It just questions our security, or rather safety level in this part of the world.
Indeed, I think it boils down to knowledge. People need to get the right information. I don't think what we need to do right now is to panic. Gas has come to stay. I remember my mom, for example, for several years, to get her to accept gas. It was, I mean, thank God she's totally at home here right now. But, you know, I think that we just need to continue. I mean, people are mothers, people at home. Do they have access to relevant information on how to, you know, safety, just basic safety, you know, information that they need to
Is it just about mothers? I mean, I'm just talking about us humans in general.
Generally, indeed, generally. I'm just mentioning Monday because I mean, I mean, this part of the world, they're more at home and all of that. But generally, as a people, you don't even need to be a safety expert to know the basics. What should I watch out for? What are the things I should avoid? Are those information out there for us? You know, so I think that, you know, we need to do a lot better in terms of getting people to have the basic information that we need, basically.
All right. Well, our final paper before we go to sports is This Day newspaper. Top story here says, as federal government closes case on Nolan to make no case submission. Now, this is your forte. Account officer's testimony shows CJN does not have speculated fat balances. Says he took $500,000 bank loan and has only $56,878 in his domiciliary account. And of course, another top story here, the top part of the This Day newspaper. Emefiele foresees 3% GDP growth in 2019. Emefiele foresees 3% GDP growth in 2019. Federal government, NLNG, to sign $1 billion Nigerian content deal on Train 7. And you can find that on page 11 of This Day newspaper. And of course, DHQ, that's the Defense Headquarters, says military won't truncate democracy. Let's talk on again.
Well, the drama keeps unfolding. To me, it looks more like, you know, a soap opera. If you ask me, because it's interesting. Because if you read the story, you know, it says that initially the federal government had penned down 6 witnesses, and then now what we have is, you know, they got to, after getting to the 3rd witness, they say, okay, so we are closing our case, and then, you know, Onoge on his part is saying, look, you have not made out any case, you know, I'm going to try to make a no case submission. What that basically means is that, look, based on what you have said so far, the facts you have given and the argument and what have you have not sufficiently made a case for me to answer. You've not proved, you know, beyond reasonable doubt, which is the threshold that's expected and all of that. So it's just, I don't know, right now, I don't see him coming back, even if already this is a stay on his reputation.
But if the case is, if he is found not guilty,
do you think he will come?
I'm just saying. Because the reason why he's suspended is because he has a spending case and they think he's guilty.
That's what we were told.
So if he's not guilty, shouldn't he be taken back to his position? Because whoever is there is acting. I mean, if we're doing this in fulfillment of the law, if we're following the modus operandi that wasn't followed in the first instance.
That is the ideal case, really. That's what should happen, but...
Because he should be reinstated, I'm thinking, and then he should get a public apology.
Hopefully. Maybe
I'm being a bit overly ambitious
Yes,
here.
I really hope that could happen, but I don't see that happening in any events, because from the onset, in my opinion, it was a well-scripted drama, you know. It's my opinion anyway, because the way the federal government went about it, they didn't follow due process. As legal practitioners, we screamed, we shouted that this is not how to go about it, and it fell on deaf ears. The mission has been accomplished now. The elections are concluded. We're hearing this. We're supposed to be 6 witnesses now. It's only 3 are being called. For me, it's just a huge drama. On its part too, we're not saying that Onogen is guiltless. In other parts of the world, when these kind of things happen, you even resign. So, but if he has any sense of this, I don't even think, even if the unlikely event happens that he's said to be innocent,
being reinstated,
I do not even think he should continue.
He should continue.
I don't think he should.
Interesting. What part do you think that the military plays in all of this? Because some people have said that in the first instance, the military should have stood the judiciary should have stood its ground as to the modus operandi not being followed by the executive. Being that the man who is acting should have said, no, let's follow due process. And if that is followed, then I can be put there as an acting CJN. So if the judiciary is somewhat, divided as to what should be, is that in any way going to help our democracy to become stronger or strengthened?
I wouldn't say the judiciary was divided, really. It's just a case of it being clear how much power the executive has. That's basically what happened. What could the judiciary have done exactly? I'm not sure. It's just unfortunate. It just goes to show to us that we still have a lot of work to do as a people.
But Malami should have said.
Yeah, that's the discussion.
Mr.
As an individual. Yes.
This is not the modus operandi.
Exactly.
And this will be a slap on the face of my profession and my colleagues.
Obviously, our institutions are not strong enough. If our institutions are strong enough, the presidency and the executive would have been put in its place to say, look, this is how it should be done. This is how we should go about it. But our institutions, we still have challenges there, and we really need to learn. We need to make progress as a people. We need to ensure that things like this, do not happen anymore in the future. It's unfortunate, really.
All right. Finally, the military is saying they won't truncate democracy. Do you have something to say on that one?
We hope they don't. We hope. You're not expected to do that in the first place. So.
With the display that we saw, especially for Rivers and some other places, mostly Rivers, and the press conferences that the army put together, with all of that, do we see, them really taking their hands out of the puddle in any way?
You were invited in the first place.
The pudding, rather.
You were invited in the you involved them in the first place. If we had enough security personnel in terms of police and, the civil defense and what have you, to man the election, maybe there wouldn't have been any need for the military. But from the onset, you remember what the president did on the eve of the election, addressing the security forces, saying, look, let them pay for their lives. All those things have a way of empowering the military. That's basically, we invited them in the first place, so we shouldn't be complaining now. We brought them to book.
Well, we want to thank you very much, Daniel Odupe. He is a legal practitioner. He's been speaking with us on Off the Press. Thank you for joining us.
It's a pleasure.
But before we go, well, the rains are high and it's keeping our sports guys from being in the studio. But then let's just quickly run through the headlines on sports, complete sports this morning. Red Hot Ajayi eyes first Eagles goal, says Nigeria involvement has helped him grow. Onuachu, eager to brag debut goal and relishes Eagles call-up. Still in sports, Musa Ogu. Why Eagles must beat Seychelles. Nigeria's stand-in captain eager to end AFCON qualifiers with a win. Ronaldo avoids CL ban. Juve staff fined £20,000 for Cojones celebration. Solskjaer wants Sanchez out of United, and Barcelona/Coutinho asking price. They're slashing it down. Dortmund want £100 million for Sancho, and Houghton wants game time for Balogun. PSG prepared to spend 100 million on Varane, and Djokovic plays down Federer, Nadal rifts. And that's all we have for you on Sports, Complete Sports this morning. Thank you all for being part of the paper review segment on Off the Press. My name is Mary-Ann Okon. Enjoy the rest of our programs.